The cops came through the door, a firearm discharged and hit this young woman sitting in the living room. I was in the back bedroom of that house when that happened. I'm Jarred Grooms. I'm 32 years old. I'm from Piketon, Ohio, and I'm a former drug addict. Started out a lot like every other kid from Pike County. I grew up on a farm, 100 acres, 200 acres. I mean, I lived out in the middle of nowhere. I was raised to be a good kid. I was raised in a Christian home. My grandpa took me to church for the first time when I was 3 years old. So I was raised the right way. I knew what it was to be a good Christian person. I had a good set of morals, and coming up through school, all of that stayed with me, and I understood. I thought I understood what it was to be a good person and to live the right way. But as I progressed through school and started hanging out with different crowds and started running with different people, my life took on a pretty drastic change. At 15, 16, I go out and I start drinking on the weekends, and that's in my own mind. That's fine to go out and to get hammered on Saturday night with my friends. It's all in good fun because, again, I'm going to school, I'm still making good grades, I'm still participating in extracurricular activities. And it wasn't long after the drinking started that I was introduced to marijuana, and I had my wisdom teeth removed within that last year or so of high school. And you have the guys coming and saying, well, you know, if you crush those up and snort them, that the effects of it are more intense. And so that's where all of that kind of started at. Again, in my own mind, I try to justify it all because I've got scholarships to whatever college I want to go to. I graduated with a 3.75 GPA, 12th in my class. In my mind, I'm still all right. You graduate high school, you go to college, and this is when things really took off. My pain pill addiction worsened. I mean, it turned into a couple days a week to almost a daily thing. It was within those couple years after high school that I was introduced to cocaine. Started using it again, starting on the weekends, and as it progressed, it turned into a daily habit. I was addicted. There was no question in my mind that I was addicted to pain pills, that I was addicted to nerve pills, that I was developing very quickly an addiction to cocaine. My grandpa passed away, the one that I said took me to church with him when I was 3 years old. My mom and my dad divorced at a very young age, and I was with my grandpa every single day. He was sitting there waiting on me to get off the bus every day, and he was my best friend. So when he passed away, it kind of flipped my whole world upside down. That was the point where my addiction kind of took off. This was my third year of college, and I gave up. Like, I just quit. I ended up failing several classes that semester. I dropped out of school after that year, and my pain pill addiction skyrocketed. You have somebody who's not going to college anymore. I'm not getting the reimbursement checks anymore. I don't have a job. So I've got to figure out some way to feed this addiction that I've got. And I've got friends saying, I'll give you pills cheap. You can resell them for full price. You get your high for free, you make me money, and everybody's happy. In my own mind, I'm still trying to justify that everything's all right, that I'm okay, that, yeah, I've dropped out of college, but my grandpa's gone, my best friend's gone. I need time to recoup. I need time to just gather my thoughts. The addiction gets worse, the number of clients grow, the people buying off of me, it explodes. But this is also around the time that whole Florida-Ohio pipeline started drying up, that you couldn't just drive down to Florida and get pills and bring them back anymore. And with that came heroin. You walk into the drug dealer's house and he says, I don't have any pills for you today. But here's this, try this. This will make you feel better. You won't be dope sick. It's the same thing. It's cheaper and it's more potent. This was probably at 24 years of age I started using heroin. At first it was orally, or I was snorting it, but eventually it turned into intravenous use. I started shooting up. So then we come into this time where now the pain pills are gone, the cocaine's gone, the alcohol's gone, all of that's gone. Now it's just heroin, but now I also have to find a way to feed my own habit, and I have to have some way to get what I think I need. The guy that I'm buying my heroin off of says, listen, Jarred, you're one of my biggest customers. I know you're coming up here picking stuff up for other people. I'll front you this. You take it, resell it, do what you gotta do with it. Bring me back my money. You'll make some for free on the side. The guy that was supplying me actually ended up going to jail, and I was able to get in touch with his suppliers. I went from just your average street level dealer, just nickel and diamond trying to keep my own high going, to within 3 months, I was bringing on average $20,000 worth of heroin into Pike County every 3 days. With having that amount of money and that amount of drugs just laying around at my fingertips comes a new level of addiction. At one point, I think at my highest point, I was shooting 1.5 grams of heroin a day. And that was just to keep me level-headed. I wasn't even high. Like, that was just to keep me what we called well at the time. I was still living with my mom at the time. I felt like any second, like the cops were going to be coming and kicking her door in. So I stepped away for a little bit. I got clean. I wasn't using, I wasn't selling, I wasn't doing anything. And that lasted for about 3 months. And then I went right back to it. And I'll still never forget it. December of 2013, I was sitting in a bedroom, and a SWAT team came through the door. And anybody who keeps up with any kind of local news will remember this drug raid in December of 2013. There was a young woman killed at this drug raid. The cops came through the door, a firearm discharged and hit this young woman sitting in the living room. I was in the back bedroom of that house when that happened. You have this escalation from me being this good kid who's never done anything wrong. So now I'm looking at a riot shield coming through the door and cops screaming at me to get on the ground. And one would think like this was what it is going to take to straighten Jarred up. Like, this is what it takes. I was taken in that night. I was taken into custody. I was left in a holding cell. I was interviewed by the Ohio BCI, and I was cut loose the next morning. And the very next day, I was getting high again. Like, because this is all that I knew. Like, it's all I knew to do. And I think everything's all right because they didn't keep me in jail that night. I thought, well, if they had me on anything, they would have kept me. Like, they wouldn't have just cut me loose. So I continued to get high. I started selling again on the side on a much smaller level. In July of 2014, I was pulled over by Waverly Police Department in the parking lot of the YMCA. And they had thought that I had swallowed some dope, so they took me to the hospital. And I can still remember very clearly, I don't remember which officer it was, but I still remember very clearly one of the officers walking in to the hospital room that I was in the emergency room, and he sat down in a chair right beside the bed and he said, Jarred, I'm not charging you with OVI. You've got bigger problems than that. And he said, you have a warrant out of Ross County. It was a secret indictment for felony 5 drug trafficking. You're going to jail tonight, but it's not for an OVI. And I remember being so taken back by that, even in my induced state at the time, even in my fogged up state. Like, I remember it being so taken back. Drug trafficking, me, like 10 years ago, I was a good kid, and now I'm sitting here looking at a cop telling me that I've got drug trafficking charges. So I was taken to jail that night. I went in front of the judge the next morning. He released me on an OR bond. And one would think, again, I've been through a drug raid in December, now I've been arrested and told that I'm formally being charged with drug trafficking. One would think, okay, this is time to straighten up. The very next day, as soon as I got out, Mom came and picked me up from jail. That very evening, I was out getting high again, because that was all I needed to do. Where this ends up at is in late August of 2014, I was accepted into Ross County's drug court program. It's a program for first-time nonviolent drug offenders. The program is with the understanding that if you complete it, your charges get dismissed and everything goes away. So it's like, cool, like this is a good thing for me. I'll ride out my time, I'll do my 14, 16 months, whatever it is, and then I can go back and start doing exactly what I was doing again, and I won't have any felony charges, I won't have anything to worry about. And then things took kind of a weird turn around the end of September, or middle of September. It's September 13th and, that's wrong, September 23rd and 24th. I wrecked and totaled 2 cars in 2 days. I was just a few days clean of heroin. I was high on Xanax, and in 2 days I totaled 2 cars. So I hit a tree the first night, and actually the scary part about that was I missed a corner and hit this tree. If I wouldn't have hit that tree, I would have went through somebody's house. The very next day it was the same thing, just not a tree and no house involved, but I ended up going off the side of the road, going through a fence. But that state patrol showed up the second night, and he looked at me and he was like, "You have got," and I still remember this, I was sitting on the side of the road and he walked up and said, "You have got to be kidding me." So he took me to jail that night. I refused to take a drug test, and my probation officer from drug court walked in the next morning. He said, "Jarred, what are you doing?" Like, what are you, like, this is it. Like, this is your last chance. You're gonna sit in jail until the judge says you can leave, and that's it. Like, this is your last chance. So I went, I sat in Ross County Jail for 4.5 days, and I went back on Monday and seen Judge Ader, and we sat in his chambers and had a real good heart-to-heart. He basically told me the same thing that Brandon had told me. He said, "Jarred, this is it. Like, this is your last chance. I have every right now to kick you out of this program, but I see something in you." And I think that this is the point where you can turn things around and you can start doing things the right way. So the next day, he went ahead and let me out of jail that evening. The next day I went in and passed the first drug test that I think I had passed in several years. So September 24th of 2014 was the last time that I've ever touched any kind of mind-altering substances in any way, pain pills, heroin, what have you. But there was a stipulation to the drug court program where you had to attend Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous meetings 3 times a week, and Jarred wasn't having that. So I asked the judge if I could go to church in place of that. There's 3 church services a week, 3 meetings a week. Let's make this work. Him and the judge and the lady who owned the counseling offices talked it over, and they said, "Jarred, absolutely, like, if that's what you want to do, here's this piece of paper, have your pastor sign it every time you go to church, and if that's what you want to do, we'll work with you." So again, Jarred in my mind is like, yeah, I'm gonna ride out this 14, 16 months, and that's gonna be it. Like, everything's gonna be all right, and I'm gonna go on about my way and go back to living the life that I was living. But looking back on all of this now, you can see the divine providence of God working through protecting me through those wrecks, through the judge and the woman who ran the counseling office okaying me to go to church, because I sat in church for 4 months. And January 25th of 2015, I went to church that morning, and I can't tell you what Danny preached on that day, but I know that God worked through it, and I know that there's something in my heart that was touched that morning, because I left there a broken mess, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to go to the altar that morning and pray, but I was too embarrassed to do that and too prideful to go and do that. But I remember saying just a prayer in my pew that morning. I was crying. I mean, I had tears running down my face, and I was, "God, I don't know what you want from me, but I know I'm tired of feeling the way that I feel." And I went home after service, and I knelt down beside my bed, and it was basically the same thing. "God, I don't know what you want from me right now. Like, but I know I'm tired of feeling like this. I know I'm tired of feeling broken. I'm tired of wanting to go back to this old life. I'm tired of constantly being at war with myself and trying to live this clean and sober life, but still wanting to go back and to do the things that I was formerly doing. I'm tired of all of this." And I repented of my sins that morning and trusted in Christ, and I can't explain as much weight as was laying on my shoulders when I knelt down that morning before this holy and this just and this triune God. The weight that was laying on top of me when I knelt that morning was completely removed when I got up. I came up from that prayer a new person. It was like all of those desires that I had to go back and to continue living that addictive lifestyle, the drugs and the money and the women, all of that I had desired 10 minutes before when I got up was gone. There was something inside of me that had so drastically changed within a space of 10 minutes, and I still can't describe it. And I can't even begin to describe the freedom that came with getting up and knowing that God had done something in my life. And not only had He made me a new person, not only had He improved me morally, but now I am identified with Christ. I'm no longer the Jarred that I was, the Jarred that was addicted to drugs, the Jarred that was addicted to heroin, the Jarred that was charged with felony. I'm no longer that person, but now I am this new person in Christ. I have this new identity. I now am reconciled to God. And just the freedom that came with knowing that was absolutely phenomenal. And to say that I've been perfect since then, I haven't been. We know that we have forgiveness with the Father, and that is one of the most freeing ideas and one of the most freeing concepts that you could ever grab a hold of. I went through the rest of this program, so now from January until I graduated in November, it was like, it's not a fight anymore. Everything's easy now. I don't even have to think about going and whether I'm going to pass this drug test or whether I'm going to go out and slip up and get high this weekend. I don't have to worry about any of this anymore because I don't want to do those things anymore. And November of that year, November of 2015, I graduated Ross County Drug Court. My charges were dismissed. I went back a couple months later and got my record sealed. To go to the courthouse now, you would never even be able to tell that I was ever arrested for drug trafficking. You would never know that any of that ever happened if it weren't for me being so open to share this story. And people look at me a lot and they're like, why do you want to talk about that so much? Why do you want to share that story? If that was me, I'd rather just forget all of that and never talk about it, just put it in the past and move on. But the point is, in me sharing my story and my desire to share my story is to convey the hope that is found in Christ, to convey that there is freedom from addiction, that you really can change, that there is freedom that is found in serving this holy and this just and this perfect God who's created everything that we see around us, that there is freedom found in Him and in Him alone. I've got to share. It's like a prerogative in my life now to be able to say, listen, it doesn't matter how far gone you are. It doesn't matter what you're addicted to. It doesn't matter how depraved and how corrupt you might be. There's freedom. And that's why I'm so open to share this story, because I want people to know, especially people that were in the same situation that I was, living the same life. So often in addiction, nobody ever sees a way out. It's like they wake up every morning, the only thing that they can think about is, how am I going to get high again? I'm never going to be able to break out of this cycle. And you have these very strong feelings of almost self-punishment coming in. I'm an addict. I'm worthless. I'm hopeless. My family doesn't want me. Nobody, the world would be better without me. And you see a lot of that in the addiction culture. But I'm here to say that there is freedom from that lifestyle, that you can be freed from all that. You can turn your life around and make something out of it. You don't have to be lost in that cycle for the rest of your life. God has taken this broken mess, this life that it took me 10 years to absolutely destroy. And I was so engulfed in this darkness and this dread and this doom and this guilt and this shame and this fear. I was so consumed with all of that. But just as consumed as I was with that at that point in my life, now I'm so consumed and overwhelmed by this freedom and this light and this graciousness of God and forgiveness that He offers. I'm so overwhelmed by that now. And it's two completely polar opposites to be on either side of this. But I'm thankful for my life now. Every day I wake up and I think, God, I don't deserve any of this. And I truly don't. If I'd got what I deserved, I would have spent some time in prison and been labeled a convicted felon the rest of my life. But God's grace and mercy, He saw fit to lead me down a different path and to give me opportunity, not only to be brought out of that life of addiction and to be set free from it, but now to be able to share the hope that is found in Him and the freedom that is found in serving Christ, and to let people know that no matter how far gone you are, there's a God who graciously extends His hand and saying, "Come to me, ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." That's what I've got to share, and that's what I've got to believe, because I've seen it work so evident in my life. I love the life that God has given me. Not only just the freedom, but after finishing drug court and finishing college, and God, completely unbeknownst to me, had plans for me to be a preacher. And that's been one of the greatest joys in my life, is to be able to travel. For the last 3 years, I've traveled to church after church after church, meeting an array of brothers and sisters from all different denominations and all different theological backgrounds. I've had the opportunity to meet so many people and to share my story and to be able to preach the gospel of Christ, and it's the highest honor that I could ever think of, to be able to stand and to proclaim His gospel. I'll say that for anybody who does take the time to watch this, that's struggling or that's lost in addiction, that you just don't see any way out, reach out. My Facebook page is wide open. I will read messages from anybody who needs help. If you truly want help, there's freedom from the lifestyle that you're living. And I will help you. If you're ready to help yourself, I will help you in any way I can. I've got places that we can contact. I've got people that we can get in touch with, that we can get you the help that you need.